Trump is deliberately trying to taunt the judge over and over and over again so that he screws up and then there is, some basis for appeal. And so I think he's been a model of what a judge should look like. And yes, you are right. It is very frustrating to watch sometimes because you kind of want somebody to throw it back at him in a fashion that would be emotionally satisfying, but would not be good for the system.
Hello and welcome to the Bulwark Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Miller. We got a doozy today. Ben Wittes, you know him, editor-in-chief of Lawfare, senior fellow at the Brookings Institution, writes Dog Shirt Daily, man of the people, Ukrainian activist. What else? Do you have any other titles? Husband?
Yeah, I mean, I'm I guess, wearer of dog shirts.
Wearer of dog shirts and ostrich shirts. You come up with my phone in an ostrich shirt for some reason.
Yeah, that's an emu, and it gets very offended if you call it an ostrich. I'm sorry,
Emu Shirt Daily. We're going to have to update it. We talked with Rick Wilson yesterday a bit about Costello from the outsider's perspective, this defense witness that was, I guess, supposedly their star witness that lost his mind and started doing a Goldberg stare down on Judge Merchan. And so I'm dying to hear your take from having, seen it in 3D.
Yeah. So I was in the overflow courtroom when it happened. Costello shows up. He's a criminal defense lawyer, but he's got a pretty distinguished pedigree. He was the head of, or one of the heads of who's a bigwig in the U.S. Attorney's Office back in the day in the Southern District. But he's definitely kind of broken bad, and he's, there because Cohen had basically accused him of being part of this pressure campaign that was directed against him to toe the line. And there is a long string of emails that seems to validate this. And so he's now called by the defense, and he's really the only defense substantive witness. And he shows up, and he is just kind of openly contemptuous of the prosecutor and the judge. And, there are repeated objections to things that he's testifying to, and the judge is tending to sustain them. And he kind of rolls his eyes and he sighs, and he at one point says, geez, as though, he's kind of got this running commentary of what Justice Merchan is doing. And, there's only so much of this that Justice Merchan is willing to take. And so at some point he excuses the jury and says to the guy, look, when I make a ruling, you don't sigh, you don't say, geez, you don't roll your eyes at me. This is my courtroom and I'm the judge. And the guy seems to accept it. But then moments later, he just starts staring at Justice Merchan. And Merchan, who is
what kind of stare? What kind of stare? Like a mean mug?
It was like a kind of, you don't intimidate me. I'm a badass, lawyer with an Italian last name kind of thing.
How old is this man? He's
like 70-ish.
He's white hair.
He's not a young guy, white-haired guy. And Merchan just, who has been just a model of appropriate decorum and behavior the entire time, sort of snaps and says, are you trying to stare me down? And then he just says, clear the courtroom, and they throw out all the journalists. And what we see in the transcript in the moments subsequently is that he says to him, basically, your behavior is contumacious, and if you don't cut it out, I'm going to hold you in contempt. And so it's a hell of a moment. It's the most dramatic moment of the entire trial. It's on a point that's completely marginal to the charges against Trump. This is the part of the case where an aged lawyer, gets into a staring showdown with the judge. And so then the jury comes back in, and Costello is mostly on best behavior for the rest of his testimony. Although best behavior, he's still really sarcastic, and he's I can't imagine he made a good impression on the jurors, for whatever that's worth.
And this guy, we talked a little bit yesterday about how, he was kind of a mediator between Cohen and Giuliani until Giuliani stopped paying him. It's like such a bad mobster movie. He was also Bannon's attorney. And I guess he impressed Trump. Was it with a cable performance, or like Trump wanted him because the contemptuousness was kind of a feature, not a bug, right? For Trump?
I think that's right. So Costello, he's a relatively small player in this story. He comes up because Cohen is describing this pressure campaign that was put on him after the FBI raid or search warrant against his house and office. And he talks about how this guy Costello, who's close to Giuliani, gets in touch through a mutual lawyer friend and wants to represent him, and really pushes to represent him, and sells his bona fides as a lawyer is that he's got this back channel to Giuliani. And the implication is, the White House will take care of you if you toe the line. And that's the significance of his story. The defense brings him on notionally to rebut this. I have heard, I haven't watched any of the television coverage of this. My impression is that he did go on either Fox News or some other network to sort of deny Cohen's story. And why this has to do with whether Trump falsified business records to cover up a payment to Stormy Daniels is completely beyond me. But the prosecution put on this testimony by Cohen, and then as a result, the defense gets to kind of try to rebut it. And so that's how the situation arose.
I want to, talk about the case. So Trump did not testify. Shocking.
Yeah, it's amazing. He said he really wanted to, and yet once again, he actually, when push came to shove, he didn't do it.
It's funny for the interview with your friend Jim Comey on this episode. I was just kind of searching through, trying to refresh my memory on everything. And there's this New York Times headline from 2017 that's like, Trump says he would gladly testify under oath about the accusations Comey makes. Yeah. It's like, story same as it ever was. Did that testimony ever happen? No. It turns out I will definitely testify. These people are lying. I will testify. And then, no, this guy's not going under oath.
Correct. And look, I mean, that is his absolute right under the Fifth Amendment not to testify. And the jury will be instructed, of course, to make no inference against him on that basis, as well it should. I think the public is entitled to make whatever inference it wants as a matter of judgment. He has an absolute legal right not to testify, and for us not to hold it against him. That's not the way journalism works. It's not the way voting works, and it's not the way history works.
Here's the Times headline: calling Comey a liar, Trump says he will testify under oath.
Well, yeah, Jim Comey is many things. He is not a liar. And Trump as that headline reflects in retrospect, is also many things, including a liar.
Yeah. It's tough. Didn't age well. New York Times. This all kind of ties. So I talked to Jim about this quite a bit. This is true of this New York Times headline that we're looking at. It's true of Judge Merchan at a certain level. You wrote in Dog Shirt Daily this week about how he is a very fine judge, about how in the face of all of these attacks on his family, and just the clown show outside his courtroom with all the guys and mini Trumps in their red ties, lying about him. Like, he managed to continue to be fair, not treat Trump differently than he would a different type of defendant. All that said, there's just this pattern of judges, reporters, FBI directors, trying to be fair in the face of somebody that has no interest in fairness, no interest in the truth, no interest in playing ball. And aren't we all just doing Trump a favor by being too fair?
So I think too fair for what, right? So it is, I think there's a very good case that journalism has been too fair, and that we are all, trapped in certain norms that value fairness over truth, and that assume that we're going to get to the truth by the clash of perspectives, rather than that, one side is speaking the truth and the other side is lying, and that there's no, that the role of fairness between truth and lie is not the same as the role of fairness between, you're this perspective and I'm that perspective. I don't think it is possible for a district judge to be too fair to a criminal defendant. I think it is possible for a district judge to be, there are rules, and the district judge's job is to manage the flow of information to the jury. And Trump is trying to make it, it's the prosecution's job to make sure that that the information that gets to the jury is enough to convict. But look, the system is stacked in favor of the defendant enough that if you are not careful about how you run a trial, the conviction will be overturned. And, we just saw that in the Harvey Weinstein case, yeah. Right? And so it is in the interest of both the fundamental values, but also protecting whatever conviction emerges, to be careful, to be thoughtful, to make sure you are solicitous of defendants' rights, which are enshrined in, 5 provisions of the Constitution. And Trump is deliberately trying to taunt the judge over and over and over again into making that impossible for him, so that he screws up and then there is, some basis for appeal. And Merchan, in my judgment, has been just exemplary in taking it and taking it and taking it, and then issuing rulings on the merits. And sometimes those rulings are holding Trump in contempt for violating the gag order, and sometimes they're keeping evidence that the prosecution really wants to get into evidence out. And so I think he's been a model of what a judge should look like. And yes, you are right. It is very frustrating to watch sometimes, because you kind of want somebody to throw it back at him in a fashion that would be emotionally satisfying, but would not be good for the system.
Fine. Don't let me have the tantrum that I want, Ben. All right. So state of play. Closings are next Tuesday. So we have a little lag here for the Memorial Day weekend. What are we expecting? What are we expecting from the defense closing? How long do we think this is all going to take? Is this thing going to be wrapped up, next week? What's your sense?
My sense is that this closings will take all of Tuesday, but will probably not spill into Wednesday. They may. And that Wednesday we will have the jury instructed and sent out, and then it will take as long as the jury takes to either reach a decision or not. I do think in an unusual way, this case will depend on closing arguments. The prosecution has put an enormous amount of evidence into the record and has shaped it very little. If I have one criticism of the prosecution, it's that it was, a little bit of, a shotgun approach. They just, fired a lot of, to mix a metaphor, spaghetti at the wall. And now in the closing argument, they have to kind of tell the story and tell you what it all means. The defense has, as I have said multiple times before, crystallized around this three-pronged theory, that there's nothing wrong with election interference. That's called elections. That Michael Cohen and Stormy Daniels are both terrible liars and you shouldn't believe anything they say. And that Cohen was, in fact, Trump's personal lawyer and was paid for that, and therefore there's no record falsification. I don't think they have a prayer of persuading the jury of that latter point, but I do think the goal is not to persuade the jury. The goal is to persuade one juror of one of those components. Yeah. And to see if you can get a hung jury as a result.
Well, that'll be exciting. We will have you back next Wednesday, I hope. Or you're not traveling to discuss
I will be free and available as soon as the jury goes out.
All right. Well, I look forward to talking to you next Wednesday, getting a blow-by-blow on the closing statements. Thank you for your continued work as the Bulwark Podcast correspondent in Manhattan. And our man in New Amsterdam, Ben Wittes. We'll be talking to you soon.